Welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And we have an eager audience here. They've come here to learn how to control your emotions, and I hope you'll stay tuned, because if you don't learn to control yourself, somebody surely will. In the game of life, it's always someone trying to dominate you. And in politics, it's always groups of people with their heads of state in power trying to dominate the world. It's not a Superman fiction story, it's exactly what's happening. Every person trying to play God, trying to dominate someone, knocking the others down and building themselves up in the most uncanny, most insidious, most subtle ways. And the purpose of the program is to expose all of this. Now, I want you to listen to me, and I don't want you to study what I have to say. It's a very deadly thing. Studying and trying to learn Roy Masters word for word, as if you could take all this information that I give you and make it work for you, is pure folly. You cannot learn about God by studying the scriptures either. You scan the scriptures and you look for clues. You look for something that awakens you. Now, what I would like to happen is for you to become awakened by the words that I say. And when you listen to me, not trying to remember it word for word. See, it should have released you from that burden already. So you've been taught in school to study and to try to absorb vast amounts of material, as if that would make you a better person, would have all that information at hand. But you're so caught up with it, you can't make sensible, intelligent decisions with it. What I want you to do, how I want you to listen, is to come out of the word process, out of the thinking process, and I want you to discover. But you can't discover while you're learning. See? So therefore, while you're struggling to remember words and sounds, you are actually defeating the process of, well, divine revelation or discovering. And only by the process of discovering can you grow to be a human being, not subject to any person, place, or thing. Can you evolve a stature such as the world has rarely seen, like an Oliver North. See? He was able to deal with all that pressure, day in and day out. You know, 7, 8 hours a day, I forget how much time. He was grilled by 10 or 12 different senators. But he learned to hold his cool and learned to listen to his inner self, and he wasn't confused by the commands and by the twisting and distorting of questions, the hypothetical questions and all the rest of it. And that's what I would like you to experience. You cannot discover how to be a noble person, a strong, self-reliant, self-controlled, not controlled by others, not easily manipulated and swayed by pressures of life. You cannot grow to be your own person if you respond to pressures. But you cannot learn how to respond to pressures if your mind is lost in thoughts and trying to get it by a learning process. The learning process must neither be from the outside, it must be a discovering process from the inside. So as I talk to you right now, you're going to experience awakening, little flashes of insight. Each one of you will have your own little head trip as I talk, and you won't be able to remember. It doesn't matter if you don't remember what I just said a few moments ago. You may pick me up somewhere down the line after you've gone through your little head trip, but I'd like to have you talk about this head trip with me. Whatever I trigger, maybe it needs to come to the surface. Maybe we need to talk about it. Simply because if you don't talk about it, if you don't let it surface, if you let that thought process go unattended, unexamined, as you've always done, goes right back into the cycle and lost in your subconscious again, then that process is on automatic pilot still. Your programming, which is all contained in that, will still guide your misfortunes and lead you to the usual diseases and unhappiness in all of your affairs. Okay? We have this tape running like a tape. It's not really. And it comes to the surface. You know, I found myself humming a tune today that I hadn't thought of for 30 years. Where did it come from all of a sudden? It came to the surface for me to look at that and sort of, so that when I look at it, it never come back to who gives a toot about that stupid song. It was just there, and it didn't belong there, because while it took up space for something better. It displays something better that might have been there. Your mind is full of garbage, crap, pardon the expression. Aren't you full of it? Yeah? Well, you want to get rid of it, but a lot of it is so guilty, and a lot of it's so dark and distasteful that you just refuse to look at it, and you let it go right back into your system again, unattended. So far, have I said anything that triggered anything? Yea or nay? I see a man nodding his head over there. If you're ready for that microphone, right over there's a man just about to wind up with a question. All right?
It's not so much a question, Roy. It's
a comment, all right?
Yeah, a comment, just triggering things that you said. Like, I look upon my thing as like a mental whirligig that I cannot stop.
But you're involved with the mental whirligig.
Involved with it, yeah. And it's like I've got all these fossils stored in this room, you know, that...
And you're in the room with
up.
it.
Right.
And you're an old fossil.
And old songs and things like that.
You're right.
And when I listen to you speak, these things come out, and I can see them for what they're really worth.
Yes.
And
what I just said to you triggered it?
Right. It helps me to awaken and to see those things for what they really are, rather than being in awe of them.
How do you mean in awe of them? I mean, captivated by them?
By captivating, yeah.
Captivated by them?
Like a while ago I mentioned negative imagination. I constantly find myself caught up in a negative imagination, imagining negative things, like what I'll say to this guy if he says this, and
right.
what I'll call him, you know, a dirty name and things like that.
Well, what you're doing is preconditioning yourself to some future event, because you don't have any ability to think on your feet.
That's right.
You're swept away by stress, so you prepare your answer ahead of time. But the trouble is with that it doesn't fit the time when it comes, does it? It feels, it's awkward.
It's awkward, and then you go out and you try to find situations will actually pop up where you can express that negative imagination, but it's always a very bad thing to express it. I mean, it will bring negativity into your life.
You're thinking about something as you say that to me.
Right.
What are you thinking about?
Well, I'll give you a very recent example.
I like to know that. It's something that happens to you that bugs you, and if you can bring it out into this audience, it doesn't have to be your dirty linen.
Right.
But because many of those little experiences become dirty linen. See, but let's take one thing at a time as it surfaces, as it is there to look at. That's the order we should look at it.
Right.
We need not to go into some distant past. Let's take what we're looking at and start with that, even if it's a musical lyric of some kind.
Okay, well, this was very poignant to me. I was out in Palos Verdes the other day with my wife last Sunday. There was a bus stopped, and I came up behind this bus on a 2-lane road, and I pulled out to go around a bus, and a guy in a Ferrari come up behind me and got on the horn, doo-doop, doo-doop, you know, and I immediately went into this negative reaction type thing. I pulled around the bus, and when he went by, although I had my window rolled up, I flipped the guy off and yelled at him, and I immediately...
Did you give us a demonstration?
Pardon me?
No, that's good.
But this voice that came out of me, I saw my wife, she did one of these numbers, you know, like, it really surprised her that I had this. She had never heard me express myself that way.
Violence.
Yeah, like a violent type thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's very, very typical and very simple and not very complicated.
But I really hate myself whenever I remember myself then, and I really hate that. I mean, I'm disgusted with that part of myself, which I'd like to get rid of.
So now remember what I've said before on these discussion groups. It seems like I remember you being here, quite a number of them. That when you react to the outside, whatever it is on the outside that has caused that reaction displaces something good on the inside with itself. And that's how you start to gather your identity. Animals seem to gather what they are and who they are, because there's no who, but maybe what. They gather their identity from experience. They need a certain kind of environment, and if you take them out of that environment, many animals die. Somehow, you know, there's a duck-billed platypus. They've never been able to keep it in captivity, particularly sensitive. And so they try to provide all the elements of for its subsistence and existence, but they apparently cannot find all of the more invisible ones. Then it dies. You cannot keep it in captivity. You've never seen one in the zoo. Some animals are, you know, more adaptable to the environment, but we human beings seem to have grown out of responding to environment, and when we shouldn't have. I'm going to go very slow because I have a dangerous habit of going too fast. I get carried away with my own, you know, understanding of things and forget I left you behind, which isn't great understanding, is it? So they seem to have grown out. You following me, are you?
Yes.
You've grown out of some kind of trauma that has altered the processes of growth from the inner to the outer. Now you tend to grow by collecting experience. And remember I've said before that the only way you can be is by reacting more to be me. See? Because if we react is giving you an identity, then the reinforcement of that identity is more reaction and more experience. Now, I have often said that man has to go through experience. Yes, without the experience going through him. See, because you're just like an animal adapting to the certain circumstances, and depending upon the circumstances, you've adapted. And so therefore you become an Iranian or whatever it is, whatever strange habits you may have under certain political or environmental conditions, you become addicted. You might even become addicted to poverty. But you're a creature that's created out of the circumstances of poverty, and that you cannot become rich because you're addicted to the circumstances that keep you poor.
Right.
See?
That's me.
There we go. So, but the point is, once you've started this process, it displaces the real you that should go through experience without experience going through you. And if you could find a way to interrupt the process of you going through experience without experience going through you, then you will start to die. In Christian terms or lingo, it's dying and being born again. Because when you were born, environment took hold of you because you weren't strong enough to deal with it. You're just a baby. Your mother was crazy, your father was crazy, and the preacher, the butcher, the baker, everybody around you is a little bit nuts.
Yeah.
See, and they imposed their will upon you, and they set you up to live from people's approval and respond and take your identity from this world that you live in, see, and therefore you become a collection of who you are. You know, when you're talking to a taxi driver in Philadelphia, you're not talking to a taxi driver in Philadelphia, you're really talking to all of Philadelphia. See? You know, he has, everything he is a composite of everything that's made him what he is. And this is an identity crisis. But the trouble is, we don't understand the nature of our anxieties, because the human being was not originally created, and the evidence of this, that we have anxiety. If we are poor, we have anxiety because we are not meant to be addicted to being poor and taking an identity from poverty. And if we are rich, thinking that the crisis of the pain or anxiety is caused from being poor, and the inferiority caused from being poor, riches would compensate for riches. That will do it. That's again being addicted to environment of riches, right?
That's right.
Some people are happy with poor, and some people are afraid to be rich because they're afraid to leave their environment because they feel secure, like animals, in it. All following this?
Yeah.
Anybody identify with themselves in that? May I see issues? No, well, a couple of people anyway. You know, but what we need to do is intercede in the process. And this is what I'm asking you to do as you listen to me. Certain thoughts, surely you are flashing on things. Everyone is flashing on. Are you flashing on different things? You're not trying to remember what I'm saying? It's just awakening certain memories to your consciousness. And we need to realize that what's outside gets inside, and then what's inside is the brainchild of what put it there, and therefore we need more of it in order to be more mature. We can only be mature through more of its effect on us. See? We're damned if we do, and we feel damned if we don't. We feel like we're dying if we don't have that glass of wine or fix, or that woman you love. See? You feel like you're falling apart. And we can't leave the very things which are destroying us. Because when I say it's destroying us, it's not destroying us. There's a self that's being created out of a self that's being destroyed. It's almost like one person diminishes and one person evolves, but the person who evolves shouldn't be the one that's evolving. It's the one that's taking its identity from the world around us, and that is why we suffer. But we're all taught to submit ourselves to the gods around us and to make everything, anything or anyone, the ground of our being. Even if you just watch the liberal art types, the artsy types of liberal people, how on television they teach us to be involved with the artsy and the silly and the mundane and the trivial and pantomime and costumes and, you know, ballet, or it's very important to them, because that's how they feel beautiful from beauty. They're not really beautiful inside, but they hide in beauty, because if they didn't get the beauty on the outside, imbibe it, make it inside, they'd feel their ugliness, they'd feel their emptiness. But they are these hedonists. They teach us to involve ourselves more deeply in society and in arts and life. They call that life, but it's life to the wrong, not to the right part of ourselves. You dig? See? And I want, as we're talking here now, I hope that you're beginning to see that this process of searching, your mind is always searching to the outer, isn't it? It's reliving it, even if it isn't there. What you'll do is you'll take the thing, if it isn't there, you'll fantasy it. You'll use your imagination. So if sex has done you in, then you're going to fantasy sex. And that fantasy reality gives rise to fantasy, and fantasy refuels itself through reality, doesn't it? It creates its own reality, it creates its own circumstance to reinforce the fantasy, and so on. See, so it seems like a never-ending vicious cycle that so draws us in more deeply and builds a self that isn't real, that will fall apart at the grave with no lessons learned. Right?
Right.
That's why we must become aware. Purpose. See, everything I've said this evening, everything I've said to you this evening has tried to shock you into a state of, hey, look at that. You didn't have to learn what I just said to you. There's no reason, there's no need to memorize it. Did you understand it? Are you standing back looking at your thoughts now? See, are you standing back looking at thoughts and interrupting the process, the environmental process that holds you captive? Are you doing that? Because that's what you must do every minute, every second, every day, even at night. You must be observing your thoughts and not merely dreaming. I tell you, if you find this objective state, you'll never dream again. You'll think in your sleep. You'll remember things in your sleep, just like you're walking down the street and you remember some and you have a flash of realization, and suddenly by that realization you stand back and you've interrupted the flow just by standing back looking at it. And suddenly you're relieved because you didn't go along with it, you didn't resist it, you didn't fight it, you didn't give it strength. But suddenly you feel lighter. Well, even at night that happens. You might see a scene with your mother where something happened, and it's been going over and over again in your mind. You haven't interrupted that. It's been automatic pilot. You've been drawn back to the woman, just like your mother. You've become the father, just like your father, drawn back to that kind of woman. And your destiny is tied to that, because the past is keep reenacting itself and becoming your future in the present. And only the ever-present now, only something in the ever-present now, something that's not part of time past, time future, something in the ever-present, an environment within yourself that's stronger than environment. See, only that, when it acts through you and you're willing for it to act through you, only that can pull you away break that cycle, that vicious cycle, emotional cycle, being lost in thoughts and feelings endlessly, and make you a new person so that you can go through experience without experience going through you. And that each experience will become, that each time you now go through an experience where will remind you of something that happened before but you haven't dealt with properly. Even as you sit alone, whether you have those experiences or not, you will have thoughts about the past, which, like you say, when you sit alone after you went through that car experience, and afterwards you thought of it and you felt bad about it, but you didn't deal with it.
Right.
See, so next time you're driving down the highway, you either, before that, you could resolve it before that happens, just by standing back and seeing what a jerk you were, by being angry at this person. There's where your failure came about. Or maybe you forgot about it and it's some distant trauma, and you're driving down the street and there's an accident, and then suddenly you remember it. But instead of becoming angry and repressing it, you deal with it this time. You let yourself look and interrupt the process. Yes, go ahead.
What I did discover from analyzing that later...
You don't need to analyze, but go ahead.
What I discovered was a feeling, what triggers that, what is the basis, the premise from which that comes from, is a feeling of unworthiness.
But the feeling of unworthiness comes from your being actually unworthy. And you know what makes you unworthy? Being a creature of your environment.
Yeah.
See? That's what, not being a child of God, the sin. And whatever, one of these days, you're going to see what your original sin is. What originally started you off being the kind, set you up to be that kind of person that draws from the environment. All the things which make you an inferior being. So while you're caught up with it, you feel like you're superior. That's actually growing, but you're growing the wrong kind of being. See? You're becoming the wrong kind of person. It's only after the morning after the night before, that the light within you, realization, can cause you to realize that this being that you've been caught up in being is not a superior being, but an inferior one. See? And that inferiority, the idea, the recognition of your inferiority can infuriate you.
Absolutely.
Because you see, your pride is in conflict with God.
It can drive you insane.
It could drive you insane, this conflict between realizing that you are becoming worse, no matter how much you try to have life and be better and be right and not wrong. But as long as all your righteousness comes from what people think of you and getting an education, and you see what I'm saying, and feeling good from many experiences, positive you call them, having a lot of money or whatever, of course it's still, your righteousness, as the Bible says, is like filthy rags. There's only one righteousness. The righteous shall live by faith. And faith disappears when you resent knowing how wrong you are. See? There's two wrongs. The one wrong which, whatever that is, it's not clear to you. But when it becomes clear to you, because there's always the light trying to show you that you're wrong. Now, you don't know where the wrong originally was because you're a collection of these wrongs. Remember, you're a whole collection of them. You've got jillions of them, but the one wrong that you've got is to be resentful at knowing that you are wrong. And that causes the recycling, the strengthening of the environmental grip on you. In other words, you resent knowing it, and you're rejecting in that moment the salvation from what has you in its grasp, the process. It's almost like you're resenting God. Because there you look at the dilemma of your soul, is that this creature, this animal self that takes who it is and what it is a prideful creature. It's a prideful animal, developing a pride out of its animal, by the grossness of its animal form. Everything you are, you have an animal side and you have a spiritual side, but if the pride in you grows spiritual through being more animal. See, because by more animal means you have to get down in the dirt and grub and collect your identity, who you are, from becoming more animal, but take pride in it, thinking you're more of a person. See what I'm saying? And when you're caught up in the process, it's very difficult to see reality, except when you sit still, when you haven't got any more money left, when your fair weather friends have left you, when you've developed more troubles than you can really cope with, and are reacting to stress because you're becoming more and more sensitive to stress as you go through life, it being desirable for the development of your beast. But so much of it can come at you that you feel like your brain is going to burst, right? And the anxiety is more than one can bear. 1 minute, I just want to talk to the audience, the TV audience. So I have some material to teach you to deal with stress. And you might call this program one long pitch for you deciding to start this program. It's 3 cassettes and a book, and under the title, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well. And we hope that you will respond quickly, for our sake, because we can't stay on the air unless you do, and for your sake, because you can't live much longer the way you are unless you do. And either I make sense or I don't make sense, and if I don't make sense, fine. Flip the dial and go on to somebody else. But if I do make sense, I hope something in you will respond without pressure to do so, just your common sense. So the announcer will give you the information, and we'll join you tomorrow evening. Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions. And in our last program, I was talking about us being creatures of our environment, and we shouldn't be. We cannot have a free nation. You can have a democracy if people are conditioned by their environment, because what kind of human being are we? Are we people? Are we sheeple? For the most part, we are sheeple, and that's why you can't have a democracy. Eventually, we vote away our democracy and we vote away our democracy and vote a dictatorship in, because we have no direction except that we are given it from the outside. Men will marry women like their mothers who have been strong with them and emasculated them, you see. So we've got to be careful, and we're talking about this now. We have a lot of questions. If you missed the last show, too bad. Maybe we'll have a rerun sometime. But maybe we'll pick up the threads of it, and you'll hear, like coming in an old movie, and you'll kind of get the gist of it from what the people are saying. Okay, now, young lady right there, could you stand, please?
Well, I was just going to say that it seems like it's real hard sometimes to, it seems like so many people are so unaware of what's going on.
They don't want to be aware.
Well, right, they don't want to be aware, and everybody's kind of so cruel and uncaring and, you know, kind of going about their daily lives without paying any attention to anybody else. It seems like it's real difficult, at least for me. I feel sometimes like I'm split in two, like I want to be good, I want to be able to function in this system, I want to be nice, I want to be able to talk to people and interact and, you know, do my thing and be my own person without having all these influences.
You can be.
And so far, it's
What's
sort of,
stopping you?
well, nothing, but it seems like there's...
Don't complain then if nothing's stopping you.
Okay. No, I mean, it's just me,
must be
you know,
stopping.
I'm still right in the middle of that. I have a hard time. I go like this guy was driving on the freeway, and I watch people on the freeway all the time, and I watch how angry they get and how they cut each other off, and I just sit back and I kind of laugh, and I feel a little self-righteous thinking to myself, well, I'm learning how to control my emotions, and you know what I mean? And then I was driving on the freeway the other day, too, and some guy wouldn't let me over, and I got so mad I totally lost control, and I flipped him off, and I, you know.
You too?
Yes.
That's the second flip-off we've had in two.
And then it's like you said, I felt really bad about it. I mean, it's just a small little thing.
You will.
But I mean, I thought, well, I'm just like they are, you know. I'm just like they are, you know.
You did.
And I was.
You took into yourself a little bit of the environment that affected you.
Yeah.
And that which has affected you is really looking at as a weakness. In Bible terms, it's being born in sin. You're a slave of the process that develops you, a life that leads to death.
Yeah, it just seems like when you're in this system, and you bump into these people who are
But they're all around
so
you.
unaware of you that you bump into them all the time.
Well, why can't it
and
be?
Pretty soon I just want to go get a log cabin somewhere.
No,
and
it's
stay
no
in the
good. No,
mountains.
you couldn't grow. You couldn't grow.
I know.
Why can't it be that when they bump into you, they wake up and become better rather than you go to sleep and become worse?
Yeah.
Why can't it be that way? Why can't you be...
It's hard to work in the system.
It's not hard to work in the system. Listen, I'm sitting here, and I didn't get these gray hairs for nothing. You know, And for many years, I couldn't even come home to a wife that wasn't, you know, trying to drive me nuts. Right? She couldn't help herself either. So, but, and then it's I'm shackled to her, and I'm a loyal husband and father. I know where my duty is. And you know, death do us part. Maybe I'll die first to get out of the situation, or I'll kill her, one of the two. But that's not the way to deal with it, right? Right. The thing is, it made me a better person. And as a result of that, she is waking up and becoming a better person too. Now, that's got to be, especially man and woman. But as I was able to learn to do that, I was able to extend that to the world. But to the degree that I couldn't do that, then I took on the negativity of my mentor, my wife mentor, or my mother, which is the equivalent, you see, transferred to wife, you know, my lot. It's transferred to the next woman. And so therefore the negative influence, you know, radiating from her, I get caught up with, and I become no person worthy of respect in the home. Right. I just play into that by reacting to it, rather than scratching my wooden head and saying, hey, what's going on? Why is everything so negative? Why can't I have a positive attitude, you see? So I discovered what I'm teaching you now. There is something within us all that if we find it, if we can find salvation, see the word that all the religious nuts use.
But they don't know what it means.
They don't know what it means. They're just caught up in a hypnotic trip and another system of things where they think they love Jesus. And, you know, I always said a born-again turkey is still a turkey. Yeah. There's nothing in that turkey that could ever make him anything more than a turkey, see? But some people are more sensitive, and they say, hey, there's something wrong. I know there's a salvation somewhere. I know this guy Jesus seems like he has it, but all his disciples and all the church people who purport to know him obviously have missed the boat somewhere. They got a screw loose on top of that.
Yeah, I was watching it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. I just want to. I don't want to get too long on what happened when you drove along in your car the other day and flipped somebody off. I just trying to get in something meaningful.
Just don't cut me off on the freeway.
Well, maybe you'll bump into a person that might wake you up.
Yeah.
See, because when somebody cuts me off, I go.
Yeah.
And they make all these signs, but they make them aware that they're wrong.
Right.
See?
That is a good feeling to be.
But I didn't tempt them. See, this other person, when he cuts across you in the freeway and does this silly little thing, he tempted you to be aware that you're wrong. But it's not the same thing. You see, when you deal with the right person, they make you aware that you're wrong. But the wrong person makes you aware of wrong, but makes you feel inferior to the person who did it to you, and it makes the other person feel better than you are. Mm-hmm. That's the reason why they knock you down and they tempt you, because they turn you into an animal and feel like they feel less inferior themselves because they've made you inferior to them. Follow that? Mm-hmm. Now, when you've been made inferior, when you've lost control and have been made inferior, that's the reason when you get upset, you have lost control and you feel the inferiority of becoming a less in that moment instead of more in that moment. Follow? And you serve the purpose of the person who did it to you because they had someone do it to them. They've discovered and they learn how to be a little bit like the person that did it to them. They've lost the grace through which they might have become a better person. The only way they can be is a worse person. But now they've discovered their worseness, pardon the vernacular, but the only way that they can get control back is to throw somebody else out of control and make them worse than them. They're a bigger king on a small mountain, see? And it's this is what you see in America, a dog-eat-dog world. And we all know there's something wrong with that, but we don't know how to get out, right? Is that your question, or did it lead into?
I think so. My daughter is very young. She's 19 days old, and she was looking at me, and she doesn't have any expression in her eyes of anger or anything like that.
No, because she's 19 days old.
Right. She was looking at me, and I felt
rage,
fear, and I felt anger.
Towards the baby?
Yeah, not towards the baby so much as towards those eyes that just didn't didn't have anger or anything in them.
Ah,
Innocence.
innocence.
Yeah, she's innocent.
That's
And what I'm so afraid of,
That's how liberals feel towards Colonel North.
I don't know, I don't feel that way toward him.
They're frothing in the mouth because he's innocent. He's got more than... There's a difference between naivete, which is a baby, sort of innocent, but it hasn't a chance to be guilty yet.
Right,
But the point is, it's more innocent than we are.
yes,
And there's something not disturbed as we are.
yeah.
And there's something coming through that little baby that we can't put our finger on it, because the mind is not so muddied that some light isn't coming through the child.
And
See?
I'm so afraid.
It's closer to God than we are,
Yes,
and it's making the darkness in us hateful.
yeah, and I'm afraid,
Go on,
I'm afraid
out with it.
about hurting the baby, making her sin, making her.
In other words, you don't want her to be that. You feel threatened by the purity.
No, I do, but I don't want to make her
I know,
impure.
There's two of you in there.
Yeah.
There's the you, and that doesn't want to be that way, that acknowledges that you are that way, right?
Yes. Yes.
There's two of you in there.
Okay.
And which one's going to win?
That's what I don't know.
Do you understand that someone did that to you? Do you understand you're a victim of someone who didn't want you to, that once upon a time you had eyes like that,
Yeah.
that you were more innocent, and they couldn't stand it,
I
and they
think you're
destroyed
right.
that somehow?
Yeah.
And that's what's in you now, glaring at this little baby, innocent child.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is in our society. What you're looking at now is, what have I said in the last program? Is that we have to look at that. Now, you may not have seen that before. That many women do not see this about themselves. They just feel angry with their child and feel like, well, that's why it's normal. You know, the kid does wrong and we're angry. Well, what's a parent? How else is a parent to be? My parents were angry with me. They don't see anything wrong with that.
But she
They
doesn't
see
do
nothing wrong with projecting.
She doesn't do wrong.
She doesn't do wrong, but she will do wrong if you keep being impatient with her.
And I wasn't impatient with
If she
her.
senses that inside you glaring at her, she feels what you feel.
She
She
could.
feels your emotions, so she's bonded to you in some way. She feels it in the touch.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Of course, there's every reason to be. Now look, I just explained to you something. Just a few minutes ago, before we went on the program, I was talking to Bill, my producer, and we got on the subject of intimidation and fear, and I said there's two types of resentment, one of them is called impatience, and one of them is called resentment. Now, for all intents and purposes, they do appear to be the same, but they're not. One is the superior form of the superior form, the part of the hatred of good that tempts and is the tempter, the intimidator. And then there's the intimidated, the one who responds to impatience with resentment. Now, the one that responds is the victim. The one who causes the response with impatience is like the mother you used to have. What you're talking about is your mother's inside you. She was impatient with you, and she destroyed you because she then, this loveless state called impatience, through patience possess ye your soul, through impatience you lose it.
This sounds like a stupid question. I
Yeah?
imagine.
You understand? Who understands what I'm saying now?
I do.
Good.
This sounds like a stupid question, but I was adopted. So is it a hereditary thing or an environmental
No, it's not hereditary. It could have been something you felt, you know, your real mother must have rejected you.
I guess.
See, but about your adoptive mother, parent, they might have some bearing on that too.
Yes, I think
Because
so.
you look like, to me, I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but you look psychotic.
What's
You
that
look,
mean?
not psychotic meaning wimpy,
Yeah.
weak. If I was a mugger, I'd pick on you real easy.
Yes.
You'd be an easy target.
Yes.
You'd submit. And someone, it's written all over your face. Everybody sitting in this room, you can almost tell what people are like by taking their physical form, because what you are inside begins to show on your face and your features and the way you sit, the way you carry yourself. It is you. Cowardly, bully, redneck, see? Or a cowardly, because a redneck is a bully too, because he's a bullier. He's been bullied into being the very thing he hates. But inside there's a coward. But now, coming back to that, we are weak before the strong, and we've been conditioned to take our identity from reacting resentfully to impatient people. Who's following that? See? And these impatient people become the authority because impatience is wickedness. Patience is love. If you're patient, you don't feel love flowing through you. You don't feel love flowing through you when you're patient.
No.
When somebody flips you off on the freeway, let's come back to that. See, you don't feel love flowing through you. See, you just don't have a reaction. When that little baby looks up in your eyes, you don't feel impatience. You don't cause the response, nor are you a respondee, a person who does the responding. Either one of you are, not right. But patience is the evidence that you have found faith. You have found something greater than what's in the world. And then this patience keeps you from responding and taking your identity from the environmental authorities. The authorities you love because you can't admit you're inferior. And many people bow and scrape, you see, to authority because they can't admit to being inferior. They can't admit to, they can't live with them, they can't live without them, you know. They can't admit to that. They can't admit their slavishness is what it is, slavishness. In the light of their inner reality, they won't look at it. They're too prideful. So what they do is they worship what has created them, a slave. And so and they try to make the person who enslaves them, who's created them, try to get them to say that this slavishness is not really slavishness at all, but love, to get approval for their slavish behavior. That way they don't have to see that it's slavishness. They can think of it as greater love for the tyrant.
Do you?
See? And they're living out of that approval. They're living out of the tyrant, aren't they? Living to please the tyrant, to have this delusion, validated. Am I making sense? I don't mean to be jumping all around here, but you've got to have patience for your child. And this impatience in your child, you're looking at your mother, your mentors. You're seeing yourself as the tormentor, you're seeing the great evil inside you now. It's evil coming through. Look, just let me dissect this if I may. Patience is only possible if I tempt you to hate me and you don't respond. What kind of person are you that I can slap you in the face, I can call you all kinds of cruel things, take your money, break your arm, and you don't hate me for it? That's what I want to see. I want to see you hate me. I want to see you respond to me. I want to see, because that way I'm in charge. I'm the power. See, I'm going to be impatient to make you think there's something wrong with you. All authorities are impatient. That way they project the idea there's something wrong with you, and you get to think there's something wrong with you because you resent them, their lack of love. See, because all impatient people get their power from the world around them. They don't get the power from within. They get the power from without. See? And they get their power from without by people falling, being tempted, intimidating, but the secret is impatience. And therefore they absorb your energy. They project an identity, but they take your life. There's an exchange going on. You follow that? So that when you get impatient with your child, what will happen is you'll get between the child's love of what's right and the ground of the child's being, so he grows to serve the father in love and life. Grows up to be a patient, strong, noble being. But you get between that because that child doesn't serve the kingdom of your hell inside. He won't serve that if a child is calm and doesn't respond. He won't give up energy. He won't give up worship. He won't give up his life. You can't create a member of the kingdom because you're going to create something that needs you, that responds to you. You need more and more of those if you're a dictator. But that's why women have children. They want power, not because they love their children. Yes, there's a lady over here. Just go ahead. Go ahead with that lady. One more.
If I felt the fear and the anger does this, just the fact that I felt it, mean that I'm hurting the baby, or?
No, it doesn't mean that. It means that if you're conscious of it, if see, what hurts the baby is for you to not be conscious of it, and to justify it as if it was normal, or not to see it at all, thinking that, because you see, for some women, have you heard me say this before, that for some people, and women especially, the only kind of love comes through guilt. So when they're impatient with their children, and they see something go wrong with the child, as the result of it, guilt in them stirs, something in them is delighted, almost excited by the pain and suffering of the child, the sickness of the child, to come and love it. So the only love they know is when they react and to hurt the child. And then they rise to nurse the hurt and only make the hurt more. They nurture the hurt. They don't cure it. See? It's a sick thing. Understanding me? Absolutely clear? Crystal clear? There was a lady over here, though, that's... Okay, we'll take you in a minute, right?
Forget my question.
Oh, all right.
Well, what I was originally going to ask is, how do you attain this awareness? She was talking about how unaware everyone was. I've been trying to meditate and...
Are you aware that you're not as aware as you should be?
Yes.
And are you aware when you start to lie and make excuses and exaggerate?
Yes.
Are you aware when you start to see yourself fantasizing, and when you you start to be caught up in your imagination, and suddenly you realize that you're doing it? Does that happen to you?
Yeah. Not
Yeah.
all the time.
I know, but it does. Is it starting to happen to you?
Yes.
Then you have a leading spirit. In other words, there's something in you that loves God. Because it's only that part of you that is compatible with the will of God, which is His awareness making you aware. And see, the longing to find God's awareness and not your own egotistical, ungodly unawareness, or it's awareness of sorts. You see, you live in a dream state, and it's like you're aware in your dream. And some people kind of like their dream, even if it turns into a nightmare, because it's their world. See, no other greater world, nothing better exists except the world they've created in their dream. They don't want it to be stirred by anything aware that makes them aware that something's wrong, because their ego won't permit them to know that something is wrong. But you are letting, your soul is allowing the Spirit to make you aware that something's wrong, and that's a great, you don't realize what a marvelous thing, what a gift that is, if you just knew how to follow that to its ultimate conclusion. Yes.
I know there's nothing I can do. I've tried for years, you know. It
I know,
doesn't
but you're
happen.
another-
It
you're
just
not-
happens just when I don't expect it. It happens.
Yes, but you want it. But you're allowing it. To every person, the truth descends upon them sooner or later, until the point where you keep rejecting it so much it doesn't come anymore. And that's most people in the world. They look like normal human beings, but they're cruel and callous, and they don't feel guilty. They feel no shame. See? They think there's something wrong with you for seeing something wrong with them, because you're looking at them as like that little baby. You just, once you start on this path, something comes through you, just like that woman, lady a few minutes ago. Was that you?
She left.
Oh, she left already. I'm sorry, I didn't see her go. But you will start looking at the world like that, and they can't handle it. And now you have to learn to take their persecutions. You will be persecuted for your perceptiveness. In other words, for your righteousness. Blessed are those that men shall revile you and persecute you. You know, and say all manner of false things, Colonel North. See? All manner of false things against you for righteousness' sake, because something is going on inside your consciousness. For such is the kingdom of God, right? Now you understand the scriptures a little better? Okay.
I was just going to say, I remember when I was a teenager, I had this awareness, and
You had it, but you lost it.
I lost it.
But not completely. That's the thing.
I was so afraid I'd never get it back
But you
again.
will. And see, now I can tell you, you're also another wimpy lady.
Beg your pardon?
Wimpy. You also
Yes.
tend to be, see, you look it, you speak it. Anybody with any brains, can you all see that, can't you? See? And then you could attract a man to you that could dominate that. See? Did you?
Yes, I have.
See? I could read you. And if you ever get divorced, you marry him, and you see, because you probably attracted a man that dominated because it was the kind of father that you had that when you were young, right?
Well, that's something. My father, both of my parents were wimpy to me. In my memory, my sister, I have a sister who's both of my sisters are dominating.
But see, if you ever divorced this man because he was dominant, because as a wimpy person you need direction from something strong because you're weak and you have no sense of direction. And you support something strong which is only a tyrant, it isn't a good man, because there's no goodness in you. The only goodness you have comes from seeing slavery as goodness and getting the approval of your, slaving your life out for the approval of your tyrant. And if the only way you could change that situation is to divorce this man and marry a weaker man, and you'd become the tyrant. It's a dog-eat-dog system, you see. Am I right? Okay, thank you, and we'll continue this program in our next session. And I'd just like to remind the viewers that send money. Do you like the program? If you like the program, it's viewer-sponsored, and there's very little to sell. We have a cassette to teach you how to separate from the effect of your environment. If you recognize that your problems come from overreacting to stress, and just to cut it down in simple words rather than go through the whole spiel all over again, and you realize that as long as you are connected to your world, that world outside you that formed you through your emotions, you can never be a well person. And I have found the secret to enable you to detach yourself from the world and be stronger than the pressures around you, and indeed become a force for good. That's it. If you don't react, you don't have to make anybody react. If you react, you lose your power, and then to get that power, you make others react, and that's your problem. Being a reactor and being an intimidator, either way, you're both in trouble. So, but if you don't react, then you're in charge in a healthy way, and you hold up a light. People will love you and respect you. They could see a light, they can be guided from what's in you to them. Support the program and get the book, How Your Mind Can Keep You Well, on the cassettes. And please do so. If you haven't got the money, we'll send it to you what you can afford. The announcer will give you that information. Thanks. Join us in our next program tomorrow. Hello, welcome once again to the program, How to Control Your Emotions, and fasten your seat belt, because what you hear might indeed cause you to become very angry. I mean, not because I'm saying anything bad, because I'm saying something good. A lot of people don't want to hear good. They just want to hear that everything's okay the way they are, and that they're all right the way they are, and that makes you a victim of your environment. We've been talking about becoming victims of our environment, dependent on good feelings, reacting to bad things, feeling bad, becoming bad, and then massaging yourself with various pleasures. No need to go through the list of them. Make yourself feel good so you don't have to see you've become bad. But as a result of massaging yourself with pleasure to make yourself feel good, the bad self feel okay, lying to yourself, in other words. You feel good, you think you are good. You feel fine, you think you are fine. You're caught up in the process and you don't see that you're not fine. But the prideful person doesn't want to see the truth. It loves a lie. And pleasure lies to it. It deceives it. And the creature of his environment revels in deception. Cannot face reality. There's something called pridefulness. But the point being that you remain a creature of your environment, controlled by unseen forces you can't see because you won't see. You won't see other people are in control of you because your pride wants you to think that you're in control of your own life. That's what pridefulness is all about. You think you're the last word, you're God. Everybody's wrong and you're right. And everybody has to serve that sense of right. When you judge people, that's anger, that's a response to environment, right? But then when you respond to environment and you become judgmental, and your pride tends to grow, it grows in conflict with what should have grown. See, truth and love, a different kind of person. Then you don't want to face the truth. Pridefulness must always be right, never wrong, therefore it looks for pleasure, to offset the pain, to be caught up in pleasure. It thinks that if I feel negative and I feel wrong because the truth is there in your conscience showing you that you are, then it thinks then, well, if something can make me feel bad, something bad can make me feel bad, maybe something good can make me feel good. And your involvement with something good is just as bad as the something you're involved with is something bad that made you bad, see? The bad that you don't want to see. See, it just supports the bad and keeps you from becoming saved. So whiskey and wild women and whatever, the music, save food. Right? All right, fine, whatever. Glad you're seeing it. You get caught up hypnotically in that, and it supports what's gone wrong with you, and you'll always be a creature of environment controlled by unseen forces. And your life will always be made miserable because the unseen forces, the negative, that makes you feel positive when you don't deserve to be, and keep you unconscious of your negative, wrong condition, making you feel right, they are always working the opposite of good. They slip in your unawareness, and they come out. And in many strange ways, they affect your world you live in. They affect your health, your happiness, your family, your finances. Okay. Yes.
In your last program, I felt a strong resentment towards you.
You did you?
Yeah.
What diddly do?
I don't like that feeling. It makes me feel bad because this is what I want to get rid of.
Of course.
But
Well, why would you feel a strong
I've
resentment?
heard you say on the program, when you're listening, you'll get angry.
Yes.
Okay. I've listened to you for years, and it hasn't happened. And here tonight, man, it hit me like a bolt of
Why?
lightning. When you was talking to that lady who was adopted,
Yes.
well, I too have been adopted.
Ah, I've hit the nail on the head.
Yes, and when you reflected to her and you said that something about her mother, well, that's when I became angry.
Why? Because all mothers are good?
No, because my battles have not been with mother. It has been with the father. Remember the other time I was here, I told you about my alcoholic father?
Uh-huh.
Boy, I'll be glad when I become an overcomer of being emotional over it.
Come on, let it out.
But, oh boy, I got a lot of it. But anyway,
Why would you be angry with me?
because you was attacking the mother, and see, my war and mastery has to be over myself, of course.
Yes.
But
I wasn't attacking your mother. I was
no.
attacking her
But
mother.
what I want to scream out is, and you have said.
But your mother identified herself
No,
in you.
excuse me. What I wanted to say, and you have said it,
Yeah,
that the mother's a mess. We are messes.
right.
Only because we don't have a husband
A father.
or a father that is being right person helping us to be right. So we'll all
Right.
be right. The
I
whole
like that.
stinking family, right?
Right. What was that laugh? I missed the part, but
The whole
everybody.
stinking
The
family
whole
would be
stinking
right.
family. All right.
But see, my father was, like I said, I was adopted. And I know deep in my heart, I know that he loved me as best he could. Because when
Well, then what prevented him from loving you the rest of the way?
he didn't know how to love the right way.
Who prevented that?
Who prevented what?
Loving you the way he could have loved you.
I don't understand a word you're saying.
Well, I know, because that's... Well, in other words, he did the best he could. What kind of father was he? Was he violent? Was he wimpy?
Yes, and I've been a wimp my whole life.
Okay.
Okay?
But did you love your father? Do you think you loved your father? What was good in him?
I
What was
wanted
left?
to love him more. Okay?
But you couldn't. What stopped you from loving him? His
Number
cruelty.
one, there was no such thing as heart-to-heart talk.
Now listen, I'm leading you in a...
Oh,
I'm like the Arthur Lyman of metaphysics.
Whatever.
But you see, but if your father was violent, who made him violent? Who helped him to be violent? Who blocked the love?
Are you saying me? Is that
No,
what you're trying to say?
your mother.
No, not my mother.
Who?
I think.
Well, he was married to your
I
mother,
think it was
wasn't he?
his mother.
Yeah, but your mother took over the role of supporting the violent...
My mother was a wimp, and she was a housekeeper.
But, hold it right there.
Huh.
She was supportive. She was much more powerful in her wimpish state than your father was in his violent state. Ladies, I'd like to show of hands of all the ladies in this room who understand what I just said.
I don't.
Well,